with Kaiser being out for at least a while here, does somebody get called up? Do they just go with what they've got? Maybe it's the time for Korchinsky to get an extended look.
Yeah, you could do that. I know they had Rinzel up here when Levshunov got scratched, and then he went down to Rockford during the break. You could bring him back up. Or, because Kaiser's a left shot guy, you could bring up Korchinsky and give him that extended opportunity a little bit earlier than before the trade deadline. As we all assume that was probably how it's going to play out. But, yeah, I mean, I would be all for that. If Kaiser's going to be out for weeks but still could come back, I'm totally fine with it being Korchinsky or Del Mastro. Either one of those guys I would be happy to see and just give them some runway in the NHL, because you need to find out what these guys are going to be down the road. And without playing the NHL, it's hard to get a perfect gauge of that. So if it comes because Kaiser's hurt, that's unfortunate, but that's a break that one of those guys needs to take advantage of.
Both of them are RFAs after this season, so the Hawks control their rights, obviously. I don't think either of them will go anywhere in terms of, walking away or anything like that, of course. But I don't know. I feel like I kind of know what Del Mastro is, and I think, I'm not saying he's fully realized, but I think you can pretty much project, okay, solid bottom pair guy, maybe a middle pair guy in a pinch. I have to just see, I think 25 games is a really nice number for Kevin Korchinski to get in there. Because, look, you're pretty much certain you're going to trade Murphy. You might trade Grzelcyk.
Yeah.
You're going really young that way, but now is the time. I mean, unless you're bringing a veteran back in a trade, which I couldn't possibly imagine they're looking to do.
I wouldn't think so, but,
no.
I mean, it is... If they were to trade both Murphy and Grzelcyk, your most seasoned defenseman is Alex Vlasic. Yeah. Your average age for defenseman is like 21 years old. But I mean, it's if Kyle Davidson is looking at this trade deadline as like we're trying to open up as many opportunities for young players as possible, you could do it that way, and you could give a right shot player a full-time opportunity and a left shot player a full-time opportunity. And that could be Rinzel and Korchinsky, or, you could be Del Mastro's played on both sides of the defensive group before.
Yeah.
It's not ideal to have an offhand player, but you could try that. Like, you could give those guys all those chances to close out the season, because you're not bringing in, I know we talk about Frondel and maybe Boisvert at the end of the season joining the team once their juniors seasons or overseas seasons are over. There's really no defenseman that you're looking at like that. They don't have anybody that's in the system that is a defensive prospect that's not already in Rockford, basically. So those are the guys that you're looking at. So you want to give them an opportunity, this is the time to do it.
Well, I think you also, with that in mind, what you just said, short of Del Mastro, not a lot of these guys project as NHL players. Tage Harding, is he ever going to play in the NHL?
I mean,
maybe, but
he's had a longer development path, playing the full 4 years in college. He's a rookie this year. Right shot guy. That's the harder side to crack the roster right now, with Crevier, Levshunov, and Rinzel all in the mix. I wonder what they do with him, but right now, being huge and physical and gritty, I talked about it yesterday. Like, the defenseman, I want to see some grit
definitely
to the defensive group. Not saying that Tage Harding is going to be an NHLer on grit alone, but he has an element to his game that some of the defensemen don't.
Well, I mean, bigger point, though, is they've got to answer the question of what Korchinsky is here, because I saw a lot of, we've been talking about the draft over the last couple of weeks, and people are like, if they draft a defenseman, I'm going to flip out. They don't have anyone in the system. And if Korchinsky is not an NHL defenseman, which you better hope he is, because he's a top 10 pick, but, like, you've got to find out. Because I think if he comes up here and plays 25, 20, whatever, however many games it might be, and he still looks like the guy he's looked like so far, I know it's too early to pull the plug on Korchinsky's development and his NHL future. We say it all the time, defensemen take time to develop. That's true. But you can't have only Korchinsky and Del Mastro next year be your only call-up choices.
Right.
You've got to start adding high-level defensemen. I mean, we talk all the time about how we really like how Dallas builds their team because Dallas is always refreshing. When they lose a veteran, they're plugging in a new young player. At some point, the salaries are going to catch up to the salary cap, and if a lot of these guys pan out like you think they're going to, in 4 or 5 years, you might have cap issues again if everything goes correctly. So you've got to have some reserves coming up in the system, and you can't rely on 3rd, 4th, 5th round defensemen draft picks coming up and being NHL players. At some point, you've got to take a true NHL prospect defenseman in the draft, and maybe it's this year. Because you've got forwards coming up. You've got forwards on the cusp.
Well, you have, in theory, 2 first-round picks. One of them could be a defenseman. Yeah, I mean, if they land in a spot where, you know, the top marquee forwards at the top of the draft are gone, I mean, you could look at Keaton Veroff. You could look at Carson Carrolls. You could look at Chase Reed, Albert Smiths. Like, you could look at all those guys and be like, yeah, okay, that's a reload the defensive group type of player. You could be in that spot. I still think, based on where they could land in the lottery and the luck that they could get, I think you still need that top tier forward, because if you look at who they have as forwards, they have a lot of really good players, a lot of guys that do have some top 6 upside, but I'd say that the top 6 upside for a lot of those guys kind of caps out at like second line forwards. Whereas you have Bedard, you have Frondell, like those guys feel like, obviously Bedard, but Frondell feels like a guy that you pencil in as a top line player and a difference maker. So if you add a third player like that, like you really feel really good about your forwards group moving forward, and your defensemen with Rinzel and Levshinov and Korchinsky still figuring things out, you still have a little bit of time to kind of get to that point where you're like, okay, who are our NHL guys actually, like solidified, no more questions, anything like that. But you're right. You still do need to, as Kyle Davidson has kind of laid this out, you still need to have those waves of players coming through. So I would, if they're going to take a defenseman in the first round, I'd rather it be with the supposed second pick in the first round that they're going to have from Florida, so long as it's not landing in the top 10.
Yeah, that would be ideal. But again, it's all how it shakes out, and it's. Yeah. I know everyone is hell-bent on adding scoring help for Bedard, and I think that's obviously reasonable. We are too. But Frondell was a 3rd overall pick. You expect offensive upside from him. Kancherov's doing really well in Russia, so you've already got Lardis. You've already got Nazar. So you feel decent about some of the forward depth. Do you have a 50-goal guy short of Bedard? Probably not. But you feel like you could build a pretty healthy top 6 with the prospects you have already.
Yeah.
And you still have Bertuzzi, you still have Tavo. I know people are going to roll their eyes, but Burakovsky in a pinch can be a top 6 guy, not an ideal all-star top 6.
Yeah, but they're not parts of the future.
He can play the role, right. Well, sure. But Kancherov and Frondell, and you mentioned Boisvert, and then if we're talking 2-3 years down the road, maybe Mason West, like they're coming. There are more forward prospects. So
yeah, there are. Yeah,
I just Levshinov has to be great, number 2 overall pick. You need that guy to be a hit. He needs to be an all-star level defenseman. Rinzel was a later first-round pick, but you feel good about him. Like, I'm just looking 3-4 years down the road and saying who do I feel are assuredly parts of this thing going forward on the blue line, and it's Vlasic, Levshinov, Rinzel, and Kaiser.
Mm-hmm.
And look, you can.
I mean, you got
in 3-4 years, you can add via trade, free agency, whatever. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be your no roster's 100% draft picks, but I'm a little concerned about the defensive depth all of a sudden.
Yeah, I mean, you need those guys to find that top tier level that they're supposed to have. Was namely with Korchinsky. So if he has an opportunity to get to the NHL earlier than post trade deadline, then with Kaiser being out, this is the time for him to get up here. And I think the defensive side of things has always been what he's needed to work on the most. We've seen that over the last few seasons in Rockford, that's been the focal point of what he's been working on. The offense is there. The skating ability is there. That there is something in there to be untapped offensively, but you're not going to survive long in the NHL being just a one-way defenseman. Like, you have to have, you have to have some abilities at both ends of the ice. If you're just a turnstile defensively, it's not going to last long for you. So with Korchinsky, I think that's you want to see what he can do at this level in a bigger sample size than a handful of games. So if he can come up earlier because of this injury and prove that he's taken a step in that right direction defensively, then this is a good opportunity for him to do it.
I need more than 2 games on Kevin Korchinski, or more than like a week call up.
Yeah.
To be able to answer that question adequately, because anyone making a jump from, look at Nick Lardis. His first few games as a Hawk were not overly impressive. You saw him catching up with the game, right? And then as he settled in and played a handful of games, you started to see him, okay, now I can play my game. Now I can get back to my instincts. I've sort of caught on to the speed where I need to be. I've played with these guys for a little bit now, so now I feel a little more comfortable, and I can show what I've got, at least a flash of what I've got. If they're calling Korchinsky up for 2-3 games, it's not doing him any favors. It's not giving them a look. I need to see him for an extended period. And if he struggles and he's bad, I don't want to say so be it, but at least you have a little more clarity on what you can expect from him going forward approaching this draft.
Yeah, you got to get an answer. And whether it's an answer you like or don't, you have to have an answer. So if Kaiser's going to be out for, if they're saying, if Blashill is framing it as, he's not going to be available out of the break. He's not even going to participate in the practices leading up to the games coming back. And he's like, yeah, but he'll play before the end of the year. Like, it's going to be a few weeks. So if it was like, he's not going to be ready for the first game, but we expect him back, 2-3 games or something, you probably just bring up Rinzel or Del Mastro and just leave it as a few games. But if you're going to have a longer term thing, I agree. I want it to be Korchinsky so he can benefit from having the longer stint, the longer opportunity to play, and then you see what happens March 6th and go from there. It does look like yesterday the Ice Hogs brought up a defenseman from the Indy Fuel, Jeremy Buechler. So they're expecting to lose somebody. So whether it's Rinzel, Del Mastro, or Korchinsky, you have to have somebody up and ready to go. So I hope it's Korchinsky, honestly. I think as much as, we've seen Rinzel and he's kind of in a similar boat. I think we've been waiting to see Korchinsky kind of take that next step, and I want to see him be able to do it at the next level. Back-to-back years, he's been named an All-Star for the AHL, so, by that measurement, he's been doing well in the AHL, but you want to see how the full-rounded game translates when it goes up to the next level.
Yeah, and I know, defense is a concern, and he hasn't been, necessarily Duncan Keith down in Rockford defensively, but I don't know. I just think it's time. It's time to give him a little more. I think he's been a good teammate about it. He's not moped. He's not complained. We talked to him about it last week in Rockford and just said, how are you getting by? He's like, man, just doing it day by day, and I'm happy to be here. I enjoy my time in Rockford. But I just, it's not. I could see the hesitation of like, if we call him up and he's bad again, we got to really have a hard discussion. But better now before the draft than after.